It was a brisk autumn morning. Although the weather was clear in the early hours, by the afternoon the sky had filled with gray clouds, and a harsh wind had begun to stir up the dust drifting through the streets. Donald Trump, with his dark-colored overcoat, red tie, and his usual confident stride, was walking along one of New York's bustling avenues. This unexpected walk, accompanied by his bodyguards, had drawn the media's attention. Seeing Trump on the street like this, rather than in luxury vehicles or protected buildings, was both surprising and attention-grabbing. Since the early hours of the day, Trump had been making statements to the press about rising rents and the growing homeless population. He said he wanted to see the situation on the ground firsthand. Members of the press followed him from a distance, occasionally taking photos but not getting too close. The bodyguards escorting him kept a slight distance, while a black SUV stood out ahead, waiting. Just then, on the wet sidewalk, on top of a spread-out blanket, sat a young girl with disheveled hair, wearing a thin cardigan and shivering. A worn cardboard sign lay in front of her. "I'm homeless. Please help." Written in big letters, it stood out even amid the city's noise and chaos. Trump's bodyguards moved toward him and said, "Sir, if you'd like, we can keep going. It's going to be crowded here." But Trump raised his hand firmly, signaling them to stop. His eyes were fixed on the young girl. The sign brought him back to the ongoing debates about the housing crisis. In many parts of the country, rent prices had soared, and hundreds of people in big cities had ended up on the streets. He approached the girl in slow steps. The bodyguards scanned the surroundings and held the media a step back, while Trump knelt down. The girl clutched a worn-out bag in her arms, almost as if in self-defense. When someone came close, she flinched and raised her head. Her eyes were filled with fatigue and desperation. "Hello," Trump said in an unexpectedly calm tone. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated for a moment. She tilted her head slightly as though about to ask, "Don't you know me?" Of course, some would say everyone in the world knew Trump, but she seemed indifferent or just confused. "My name is Mary," she finally whispered. "Just Mary." "Mary," Trump repeated as the name seemed to roll off his tongue. "What are you doing here? I mean, seeing you out here in this cold is saddening. Don't you have any family? A place to stay?" Mary shook her head, speaking in a soft voice. "I had a place. Or, well, I was renting. But I lost my job. The rent doubled. After I lost my dad, my mom moved to another city. I stayed with a friend for a while, but I didn't want to be a burden. Finally, I ended up here." In the background, bodyguards and a few journalists watched the scene in silence. Trump took a deep breath. The housing crisis being discussed all over the country was now very real and right in front of him. With his characteristic resolve, he stood up. He gestured with his arm for the onlookers to step away. "Mary," Trump said in a clear voice, "I may not solve all problems instantly, but I want to do what I can. Come on, stand up. You're freezing." One of the bodyguards took off his jacket and gave it to Mary. She was still trembling slightly. She looked like someone who had just been thrown out of a building. It was clear she had no idea what to do next. Trump's assistants quickly pulled out their phones, making calls for hotel reservations. Another one ran to a nearby cafe to get Mary a hot drink and something to eat. Mary stared in surprise at the unexpected help swirling around her. Meanwhile, media members were trying to close in, asking questions like, "Mr. Trump, you previously stated you'd help the homeless? Is this the first step?" Trump turned briefly to the journalists and offered a single sentence. "Let's get this young girl to a warm place first, then we'll talk." Within minutes, the black SUV pulled away from the crowd with Mary and Trump inside. The reporters chased after them, but the vehicle slipped through the throng. Inside, Mary remained stunned by what was happening. Anyone would be if a well-known figure like Trump suddenly showed such interest. Trump was on his phone, talking to various people. "Yes, yes, we need an immediate solution. Yes, I know, housing prices," his tone underlining the urgency. Eventually, the vehicle pulled up in front of a fairly upscale hotel in the city center. Turning to Mary, Trump said, "You'll stay here tonight. All expenses are on me. Tomorrow morning, I want to take you to a meeting about the housing crisis. I'm announcing a new tiny house project there. Maybe we can find you a home. Smaller, affordable, and you won't be on the street." Mary couldn't hide her astonishment. No one had shown her this level of concern in a long time, let alone offered such generous help. Inside, hotel staff greeted Mary politely. Trump came closer. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll start a new day. The next morning, when Mary got out of bed in the hotel room, she still couldn't believe what had happened. She looked out through the large window. It was the same cold city, the same harsh wind. But this time she wasn't out on the street. Was it a dream? Going downstairs, she found the assistants waiting for her. Mr. Trump has invited you to a meeting with the Housing Development Council, they said. Mary had found a simple outfit, quickly fixed her hair at the hotel's salon, but she was still nervous. When she entered the conference hall, members of the press, city officials, and several business people had already taken their seats. A presentation screen at the front read, Tiny House Initiative. The moment Trump walked in, camera flashes went off. Mary was uncomfortable under the spotlight, her hands trembling as she tried to stand back. But Trump called her over, ignoring everyone else, and took the microphone. Thank you all for coming. We're here today to discuss a new solution to homelessness and rapidly rising rents. Yesterday, I met Mary. Until last night, she was living on the streets. No job, disconnected from her family, and crucially, she's experienced firsthand how difficult it is to find a roof in this economy. Mary, come here. Mary took a deep breath and walked slowly to the stage. Inside, she felt intense excitement and a strange sense of embarrassment. Trump gave her a supportive look, placing a hand on her shoulder. All eyes in the room fixed on Mary, as though everyone's heart had centered on a single story. This project, said Trump, aims to build small, affordable houses for everyone, for people at risk of becoming homeless or who've lost their jobs, so they can have modest but humane shelter. Mary, and others like her, shouldn't be abandoned in times of financial crisis. On the presentation slides, images appeared of 25 to 30 square meter modular houses, each with a bed, a small kitchen, a bathroom, and a sitting area. They seemed quite compact, yet welcoming. The cost, compared to market rents, would be much more accessible. There was mention of funding models, grants from charitable organizations, and so on. When the presentation ended, reporters rushed toward Mary. Are you excited to live in your new home? What do you think about Mr. Trump's project? They asked. Mary, still visibly shaken, softly responded, Well, just yesterday I was sleeping on a cardboard box in the street. Now it feels like I have a chance. I hope this project really helps people like me. That afternoon, Trump and Mary took the same SUV toward a construction site on the outskirts of the city, where a sample tiny house community was being built. Throughout the ride, Trump made multiple phone calls and statements to the press. Mary sat quietly in the back seat, watching the cityscape pass by. Only a week ago, she had been wandering these same streets with no clue this could ever happen. The site was buzzing with construction of many small homes. Some had no doors installed yet. In others, furniture was being placed. Workers looked on in surprise as Trump arrived. Mary waited near a small container office while Trump spoke with his advisors. Soon he called out again, Mary, want to see this house? Go in. Tell me how you feel. Mary climbed a short wooden ramp, taking just a couple of steps to find herself in a small but cozy sitting area. Soft daylight filtered through the window. The kitchen counter was newly polished. A door led to a single bed and a tiny closet. Everything was simple but functional. This is wonderful, Mary whispered. Warm, safe, a home. Her eyes filled with tears. Memories of struggling on the street flooded her mind. Trump stood in the doorway, watching her silently. He could see the emotions etched across her face. Mary, and he said, places like this will open their doors for people like you. It's just a start. Until you find steady work and get back on your feet, this can be your little roof. Mary wiped her tears and smiled faintly. She took a deep breath, truly feeling that this project could work, not just for her, but for thousands of others in the same plight. The next morning, news channels were all talking about the Tiny House Initiative. Reporters discussed the feasibility and costs of the new housing model, calling it an important step toward addressing homelessness. Mary's story touched many viewers deeply. Countless social media posts appeared about how a young girl with no shelter found hope in a single day. At a press conference announcing the project, Trump stood at the podium and said, "This country is strong, but we need to be stronger against homelessness. People like Mary shouldn't have their dreams left on the street. Small houses can lead to big hopes. Mary, once again under the camera lights, stood there quietly, sensing that she was entering a new phase of her life. Only one day ago, she had felt so hopeless. Now, though she didn't yet have the keys to a house, she was ready to walk the path that had been opened to her. And so, on an ordinary autumn day, on that cold sidewalk, began a story that became the first step toward a major housing reform in the country, showing Mary, and thousands like her, that a warm roof could indeed be found. Some criticized it as a political move, others wholeheartedly supported it, but everyone agreed that the USA's Little Roof movement could rapidly expand. As for Mary, even years later, she would still say, "My life changed the day Trump came up and told me, 'Stand up, you're freezing.'" And maybe one day she too would reach out her hand to someone else saying, "Stand up, you're freezing."